Sometimes the person who is sabotaging your happiness in relationships is not your parents, not your ex, and not the people who put you down. Sometimes the person sabotaging you is you. The problem with growing up with neglect and abuse is that it can drive your thinking, it can constrict what you believe is possible for your life, and it can make you see only what is ugly in the world. These are what I call trauma-driven beliefs. I can often predict who in my programs is going to make tremendous progress quickly and start changing their lives, and who is going to hit a wall. And the people who hit the wall are those who are attached to their trauma-driven beliefs. Almost everyone who had childhood trauma, who's working on healing their ability to have healthy romantic relationships, starts out with those beliefs. That it's hopeless, the people are no good, that nothing's ever going to change. And you can see why holding on to these beliefs would not be nearly as effective as going into experiences with an open mind. If you're like a lot of people, you maybe believe that holding on to these negative beliefs protect you, but what they really do is keep you isolated. They lead you away from the good choices and the positive changes and the healthy people who are capable of love that you need in your life if you're ever going to overcome what happened to you in the past. Now, it's true, the part of us that is designed to detect good people and to feel love and receive love can get so damaged by early trauma. And the more trauma happens, the greater the risk that we'll get stuck in that pattern, falling only for unavailable people or for people who hurt us, or getting so lost in fantasy we miss out on any real fulfillment. But the good news is, healing from past trauma has the potential to completely change the course of your life. You may be very discouraged about that, but I'm here to give you real hope. There really are ways to start healing the wounds of the past. If you aren't familiar with my work, you're going to find courses that you can take with me down in the description section below this video and all the videos. But stay with me here for right now. Healing begins when you make a decision to question your trauma-driven beliefs. I've had a few miracles in my life, and the one that changed my life the most happened on the day that I stopped having crap relationships. At the time, I had no idea why the same old hurtful, humiliating problems kept happening. And in fact, they were getting worse. And I couldn't make it stop, even when other things in my life were going well. Admitting that my old ideas and behaviors were not working, at all, was the very first thing I did that opened the door to transformation. I was so unhappy. I was so ashamed of the relationships I kept finding myself in. I couldn't really see a way forward. I had always thought that if I just met the right guy or looked prettier or changed one small thing about myself, love would just show up in my life and do the healing for me. But it had gotten clear that all my old ideas about how to do relationships had gotten me to that one night where I was so alone and hopeless. And no one was coming to save me, and that if my life was ever going to get better, I was going to have to change. If you've ever had to admit this kind of horrible failure, you know how the first several seconds or so are like dying. But very quickly a new feeling fills you up, a sense of surrender, of peace, and then, thank God, possibility and even hope. Everything at this point depends on your willingness to get real and take action, and then keep taking action. Now, negative patterns, I happen to know, are very sticky. They're hard to get rid of. And even when they're gone, they try like hell to come back. I tell the story of this transformation in my dating course. And if you're interested in that, you can find the link down below in the description section. But when signs of improvement began to be visible in my life, friends started to ask me how I did it. I took their calls and I taught them my techniques. And soon I was sharing my principles with their friends who'd call because they heard I could help them break their trauma patterns. Eventually, I started a blog and then a YouTube channel and then courses and coaching, and an amazing community grew up all around it. And what we do here is learn to shed trauma-driven beliefs and become open to a new way, a more practical and rational and self-loving way of living our lives. We learn to heal brain dysregulation, which is really common with CPTSD, and to operate in a regulated state. When you're regulated, it becomes possible to deprogram yourself. That's a strong word, I know, but deprogramming is exactly what has to happen when we've gotten stuck in an unconscious, repetitive, and destructive cycle of behaviors. Behaviors are at least partly driven by beliefs. And when we have childhood PTSD, a lot of our beliefs came from trauma experiences. Trauma beliefs are cultural, they're family learned, and they're reinforced by our friends who likely also have unhealed childhood PTSD, because that's who we like to be friends with. We usually know what we're doing wrong, and we can try to make ourselves act normal, but this kind of symptom fix is usually only temporary. Real change demands that we identify those trauma-driven beliefs and begin to replace them. Normal people seem to just know this stuff, but those of us programmed by trauma usually need stronger, clearer guidelines that may feel at first countercultural, unnatural, even radical. But that is how to deprogram and then reprogram yourself. And it works. And if you want to learn the techniques for that, please do check out the links I keep talking about down in the description section. Just to help you determine if you're carrying some of those trauma-driven beliefs that might be blocking you from love, let's talk about 10 of them. I attract unavailable people is one. It's not a problem, actually, whom you attract. Can I tell you that? I attract mosquitoes, right? But I don't sleep with them. The problem is that you are attracted to unavailable people. You are attracted to them, whether it's because they're married or addicted or immature, they're not into commitment, or they're just plain not into you. If it happens once, it's a terrible disappointment. If it happens all the time, it's blocking you from any real kind of love. We're often attracted to people who are, whether we see it or not, about the same as ourselves. And it's we who may not be available for the intensity and risk and responsibility of being in a real and mutual relationship, especially when our engine is racing with dysregulated emotions. Freeing ourselves from the notion that unavailable people just happen to us is the first step of deprogramming. So here's another one. Sex is how you find out if you're compatible. All right, in the post-sexual revolution world, this trauma-driven belief is completely accepted by so many people I know as just the way it is. But for people with childhood PTSD, sex is more often how we bond with people before we really know if they are available or compatible with us. And then we're bonded. And then we waste years trying to retroactively turn them into the person we hoped they were in the first place. Recovery sometimes demands that we live by a different, more careful set of rules that help us avoid the same old mistakes, and I call these guardrails. Personally, I used something to transform that part of my life by using something I now call structured dating that I teach to other people so that they can be in touch with their own values and what is in their best interest, even when the possibility of romance is triggering and making it hard to think rationally about letting people into their lives. All right? So, another trauma-driven belief, you've probably been told this, I'm always exactly where I'm supposed to be. All right, I do get the basic idea that even hard times can help us grow, but it can also be a rationalization used by people in abusive or rejecting or intolerable relationships to explain why they can't or won't leave, and to perpetuate a fantasy of being loved on an unseen level. In fact, it's often an abuser who has drilled that into their minds. Other variations include, but we had this incredible past life together, or God told me to just love him through this, or we're just here to learn a lesson from each other. It's very difficult for most people to face the truth of their lives, especially when they're in a rut. Having a good friend or a trusted mentor in this area can help you avoid your old mental traps, because they say, hello, I think you might be doing it again. And when you've made the decision that you're ready to change, you're ready to be lovingly called on that kind of magical thinking, it's so helpful. It's important to have people who can give you a reality check. Okay, here's another belief. When a partner has been avoidant or not faithful or rejected you, you think to yourself, maybe it's okay because they were hurt before, or they have CPTSD and that's why they're afraid of commitment. Okay, that could be true, but whatever a person's history, if they're unable or unwilling to love you and be with you fully, there it is. They're not partner material. Understanding or guessing at the source of their feelings still won't get you loved. Moving on is sometimes the most direct route to finding love somewhere else. Here's another thing I hear people say to rationalize staying with hurtful people. They had a lot of childhood trauma, and that's why they self-medicate. So here's the truth. All alcoholism or addiction is self-medication. That's what they're for, to help people who are using them feel better, at least for a little while. Now, whatever you call it, serious drinking and using make a person unreliable, limited in terms of intimacy, possibly dangerous, and just flat out not a good dating prospect. When it's a close family member or spouse that's got substance problems, there are compelling reasons to stay in their lives. But either way, you may want to consider going to Al-Anon. Here's one. I realized my ex is an abusive narcissist, and I want to send him this book I found on Amazon about abusive narcissists. I know. It's so hard to stop fixing people as a means to gain control over an out-of-control situation. But if you're diagnosing an ex as a sick and terrible person, and then you think that you should spend some money on them and make contact with them also in order to help them, your trauma brain is doing the thinking. Being honest with a mentor has the power to break the spell and set you free to keep living your life without jerks. All right, here's one trauma-driven belief. We're just friends. Well, there are in fact ex or future romantic relationships where this is true, but there are many where one person is pining away for the other and is too scared to declare their feelings because it would be icky to the other person. Or one or both of you are using the other to fill up time until real love shows up, pretending that the new significant others will just love these friends too, which they almost certainly won't. It's all a crappy dynamic that delays your healing and puts an I'm not available force field around you. People who would make good partners can intuitively sense the force field and they stay away. The only ones who get through such a force field of not being available are people who are also unavailable. Or they're jerks and they don't care about anybody. So here's one. I need closure. This makes sense to the trauma-driven mind, but in real life it means I want an excuse to reconnect. You know what I will say. Closure is not having contact anymore. Here's one. She is toxic. There's toxic stress and there's toxic emotion, but the concept of a toxic person, while I get it, a lot of times it's just a way of avoiding taking responsibility for our own part in a destructive relationship, including what are we even doing in that relationship. It feels so much like certain people are like a poisonous element, like radiation or a virus, that it just comes in contact with you and then you fall down poisoned, right? But it's a dance with other people. If nothing else, your part is that you danced with them and you basically got triggered by their behavior. And I'm not saying it wasn't bad behavior, but it caused you to get emotionally dysregulated and lose your balance. It's more realistic to acknowledge that you have a toxic reaction around certain behaviors and that it's actually possible to become neutral to people who are selfish or manipulative or to stay away from them altogether. The best strategy is to work on that. How will you hold boundaries around the people you choose to have in your company? Okay, here's a belief. There's no good men or no good women or good marriages out there. So I used to think that all the good men were taken and I'd better just stay stuck in a crappy relationship. But now I'm sorry I wasted so many years on this kind of trauma-driven thinking, pushing away good relationships, filling up my life with bad relationships, wondering why on earth this kept happening. Sometimes you have to shed the bad relationships before you can see the good things that are possible for you, because the bad relationships are the very thing reinforcing your trauma-driven beliefs. Now take heart. Healing is possible. And if this topic is important to you, I've got some tips for you on how to prepare yourself for a great relationship. It's a free PDF and you can download it by clicking right here. And I will see you very soon.